There is a kind of creature in the world that is seen by a few, but has not been proven to exist. We collectively refer to such creatures as unidentified mysterious animals, unconfirmed organisms, abbreviated as UMA. Hello everyone, welcome to the UMA series. In the world's myths and legends, images of giant beasts are never lacking. These creatures are not only symbols of regional culture, but also reflect human awe of unknown forces. In the heart of South Africa's Northern Cape, among the ancient rocks along the Orange River, there circulates a tale of a terrifying gigantic creature. In South African myth and folklore, the elephant snake, the Grootslang. Grootslang as a name can be literally translated in Afrikaans as great snake, and as the name suggests, it is typically described as a huge serpent-like creature with a body length between 12 and 15 meters, massive in build, said to live in the Northern Cape's northwestern Richardsveld Desert in a place called the Wonder Hole, or the Bottomless Cave. It is said to be a mine brimming with treasure, where overflowing diamonds are carried by the river into the sea. As for the title elephant snake, there are two explanations. One says it describes the Grootslang's size as so great that it could swallow an elephant, a true monster. The other claims it has the head of an elephant and the body of a serpent. This is currently its most popular image, a gigantic elephant-headed snake. Legend has it that at the beginning of creation, the gods unintentionally brought forth this bizarre species, but they were too powerful, cunning, and dangerous, and the gods soon realized their mistake. They tried to split them into two distinct populations, which then became elephants and snakes. But one Grootslang escaped divine power and hid deep within the Wonder Cave, surviving and becoming the legend told thereafter. As early as the 1st century BCE, the Greek historian Diodorus wrote in his Library of History that during the 3rd century BCE, under Ptolemy II's rule in ancient Egypt, he was extremely fond of hunting elephants and would reward those who killed strong beasts. So some hunters decided to risk it and hunt the largest snake. They found a giant serpent 30 cubits long resting in a water hole. Whenever animals came to drink, it would suddenly coil and crush them to death and devour them. Here, the cubit is an ancient Egyptian unit of length, usually the distance from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger. Using the common cubit after the Old Kingdom for calculation, 30 cubits is about 15.7 meters. The hunters tried to seize it with ropes, but were quickly terrified by its appearance. The sound of the giant snake moving through the brush filled them with dread. They threw out bait, but it did not attract it. Rather, it enraged it. It turned and seized the nearest person and swallowed him. A second man was coiled and crushed to death and was eaten as well. The others fled in terror, but for the king's reward, they steeled themselves and crept back. Later, they used nets and a confined space to capture the giant snake and handed it to Ptolemy. He soon tamed the serpent by starvation and displayed it to everyone. The Greek writer described the serpents this way: they were so large that they not only ate beef, but could swallow whole bulls and other animals of similar size, and even attacked elephants. They coiled around the elephant's legs to stop them from moving, then climbed above the trunk, thrust their heads toward the prey's eyes. The elephants, terrified, fell to the ground, and the snakes took advantage to gain the upper hand and devour them. In 1838, the Scottish traveler Sir James Edward Alexander's exploration of the interior of Africa mentions that when they passed through Namakwaland, near the Orange River, they found many hares and antelopes and occasionally saw the tracks of a giant serpent left on the sand, about 1 foot wide. Locals said that when this snake coiled up, its girth was equal to a wagon wheel. And when such a snake appeared at the mouth of the Orange River, it foretold an oncoming season of abundant rains. This is quite similar to the rain snake culture we mentioned earlier in Bushman rock art, which George William Stowe, one of the 19th century Britain's renowned geologists, documented. He spent extensive time in South Africa studying local petrology and culture. His final book, The Native Races of South Africa, was published posthumously in 1905. In the book, there is a passage that says the Bushmen of Eastern Africa claim that in their ancestors' time, this land was home to many animals, which are now extinct. Among them were some described as enormous monsters, larger than elephants or hippopotami, and others were gigantic serpents. Such creatures in this degenerate age have not been seen and are rarely even heard of. On this point, their guides pointed to the black reptile murals they had photographed in caves at Rockwood Gorge on the Orange River, saying that such a giant beast had long ago already been discovered. They were immense and immensely strong, capable of attacking and crushing a full-grown wild ox, with bodies over 20 feet long, even approaching 30 feet. On the murals at the Bottomless Caves, the great serpent is called Kubayan, a gigantic creature of comparable size, dwelling in the water and at times lurking in the reeds by the shore. This is what we previously mentioned in the Dingana episode of that series. A long-legged serpent was seen.
In 1920, the British geologist Frederick Cornell wrote in his memoir, The Glamour of Prospecting, that they had endured a hard day searching for copper. At last, in a place with ample water and some shelter, they pitched camp to rest. But their Hottentot guide, Isaac, advised them to go farther on, hinting obliquely that in the middle of the river right opposite, there was a great rock. The local Hottentot people believed it was the Grootslang's lair, and so the area was unsafe for both people and horses. Cornell wrote that many well-known Hottentots and white settlers claimed to have seen the great snake, or later to have found its crawling tracks with a width of as much as 1.5 feet. It was said to attack livestock along the riverbank. The locals were terrified of it and gave this giant python a unique name, Jimon. In the latter part of the book, their guide Old Klaus also told the party about a strange great serpent with a goat's head that would devour humans. Every Hottentot in Richtersveld believed in its existence. It was said to exhale a blast that could knock people down from several yards away, but it and the Jimon in the river were entirely different beings. After Cornell's book was published, it quickly caught the attention of the South African adventurer Hans Schultz, who in 1937 published Out of Africa, Art, recording that when he was around 10 years old, near the Orange River by northern Ariab, he saw the Grootslang. That afternoon, he and several friends were swimming in the river when suddenly a giant black snake was seen going upstream with its neck raised above the water in mid-river. The children couldn't tell whether it had limbs, nor did they know how it swam. They hurriedly got dressed and ran back to tell their elders. Schultz's father and the neighbor, Wolf, grabbed rifles to give chase. From far off, they could still see the snake swimming against the current, but before they could catch up, it vanished among the dense rocks. In 1945, the South African journalist Lawrence Green wrote in his book, Where Men Still Dream, that legend says the Wonder Hole, later the Bottomless Cave, produced diamonds, and that to go there you needed a Hottentot guide. But most locals were unwilling to go because they believed it was the Grootslang's cave, a giant serpent of the Orange River with huge diamonds set in its eye sockets. All who beheld it would be influenced by an evil power. It was said this cave connected to the sea 40 miles away. If you stood outside the cave, you could hear a low rumble, like surf pounding on the reefs. The author said a friend of his in prospecting once went in with foot loops and a rope and explored a short section of the Wonder Hole. He described it as pitch black and very hot. When he smelled sulfur filling the air, he went no farther, but he had already been able to see the bottomless tunnel. White-eyed witnesses said the serpent was 40 feet long, and the tracks it left along the riverbank were 3 feet wide. As his travels and knowledge grew, by 1948, Lawrence Green's other book, At the End of the River, once again made mention of the Grootslang. As the passage is long, I will summarize below in his own words the key points and eyewitness reports to share with you. Along the Orange River, wherever you go, you can hear tales of the great serpent. I have collected much evidence from reliable people, and I believe it is more than mere legend and imagination. The first keeper of the Cape Town archives, Reverend Leesbrandt, said he grew up on the riverbank. Locals believed that all who saw the great serpent would be influenced by a mysterious power. Those who felt awe would be fortunate. Those who did not would suffer illness or death. The great serpent could read minds and lure people into the water. Its breath could knock people down from several yards away. On one occasion, a local led him to a patch of reeds where the serpent was said to have once rested. One could clearly see a large area of reeds flattened by something immense. However, Leesbrandt thought those marks were likely made by elephants. A grocer named Kinyar said that in 1899, while trading in the Uppington area, he saw the serpent. He described how their boat had just been loaded with goats and was about 10 yards from shore, when suddenly a huge tongue rose from the river. Its 2 large eyes were 7 to 8 inches wide. The part of its body above the water was 8 to 10 feet long, probably only about a quarter of its full length. Its head appeared only for a moment before diving back underwater. The serpent did not head toward the boat, but vanished. That was the last time Kinyar ever saw it. The boatmen and the natives leading the goats were so frightened they screamed. The most realistic description of the great serpent perhaps comes from Frederick Cornell, the same British scholar mentioned above. In 1910, he and two companions were camping about 20 miles downstream of Agrabah's Falls. At that time, the Orange River was in full spate. One day, an American with them, Carmichael, was swimming in a relatively calm stretch when suddenly he screamed in terror and rushed back to camp. He said that a huge wave surged past him as a massive serpent, mouth agape, burst from the water, leaping as high as 12 feet above the surface. Its body was as thick as a barrel. The serpent swallowed a calf by the water's edge that was grazing, dragged it into the water, and vanished. Cornell confirmed the calf's disappearance. The accompanying Hottentot said he had many times seen the great serpent and had even fired at it, but found it was immune to bullets. A prospector named Hayes told Lawrence that in 1929, at the confluence of the Koober River and the Orange River, a few miles east of Sendellingsdrift, he had seen the serpent. The sighting distance at the time was about 300 yards, but their Hottentot guide fled for his life, and then a policeman stationed near the mouth of the Orange River.
In 1969, the American writer John A. Manship White, in The Land God Made Angry, part of the Blood River trilogy, wrote that the Nama said the Grootslang was a great serpent whose body was entwined with gold and gems. Although it was older than the world, it would forever guard those treasures. The cryptozoologist Bernard Heuvelmans, in his 1978 work, On the Track of Ancient Animals, The Last Dragons of Africa, listed giant serpent sightings in the Orange River region and focused mainly on incidents near the Gariep Dam in eastern South Africa. In 1960, on the dam's south bank in Orangeville, the Reneke couple and their two children claimed to have seen near the dam two swimming monsters. Reneke first noticed a huge strange object moving in the water. He hastily called his wife and children. At that moment, another similar object suddenly crossed the surface at astonishing speed. They estimated the animal's length at up to 200 feet, about 60 meters, but only about 1.2 meters wide. The two creatures seemed to be playing and eventually dove beneath the water and disappeared. In 1963, there were reports around the dam of multiple giant serpent sightings. A local officer, Roche, said he had on 3 occasions seen the creature. Some residents also said they had tried to shoot it, but missed. As I currently lack this portion of the documentation, I cannot share more detailed accounts. In summary, reports of the Grootslang sightings are not as clear-cut as other UFO cases. It is true that many people have reported in the Orange River region seeing giant serpents, but fewer people use the name Grootslang to refer to such creatures. At present, the cryptozoological community's most popular guess is that the Grootslang is actually just people's misidentification of certain known snake species, combined with observers' visual errors and exaggeration, allowing the legend to endure. Among the most likely culprits is the African rock python, especially the Central African rock python. As the largest known snake species in Africa, the Central African rock python is already at the top of the food chain, preying on everything from fish in the water to large prey animals, from livestock to arboreal monkeys, even crocodiles. The young of large felids, and even some adults of large cats and so on, can all become its food. Apart from humans, they seem to have no natural enemies. Adult Central African rock pythons average between 3 and 4 meters in length. A few older individuals can reach 4.8 meters. In Claude Martin's The Rainforests of West Africa, it is recorded that near Bingerville, Côte d'Ivoire, there was even found an individual measuring 9.96 meters. The British explorer Mary Kingsley's Travels in West Africa records a report of an individual over 12 meters long. Although these records are unverified, they already match some descriptions of the Grootslang. Combined with the rich ecology of the Orange River Basin, I personally think it is very possible that there exist larger and older rock python individuals. So let us return to the Grootslang's description. So far, I have not found a single account describing this serpent as having elephant-headed features. Everyone has seen just a snake. So where did the popular image of an elephant-headed serpent come from? According to the sources I have found, I can clearly tell you that before the 21st century, this idea did not exist. Wikipedia gives the explanation that this image comes from the American writer Carl A. Roper's 2001 book, Giant Snakes and Serpents, in which his description of the Grootslang goes like this. The Grootslang is the name of a monster in West African folklore and religious belief.
According to European travelers who went to the Congo, this monster is enormous like an elephant, with a tail like a snake. It dwells in caves and swamps along the South African coast, similar to Mokele Mbembe and Irisma. The latter is likewise a giant beast from African folklore. I carefully went through the cited references in the text and did not find any description of an elephant-headed serpent. If we must name one, there is only a passage in Joyce Hargreaves' New Illustrated Book of Animals that describes Mokele, calling it a marvelous monster that appears in many different forms and includes features of many animals, among them snakes and elephants. Then there is the 1971 book by Richard Barber, A Dictionary of Fabulous Beasts, which under the entry Mokele Mbembe groups Grootslang with the same kind. Therefore, I think this myth is very likely the result of collective creation. Between an ordinary-looking giant snake and a snake with an elephant's head, which is more eye-catching needs no explanation. Moreover, this image was later adopted into some animation and games, which sped up its spread and deepened people's impression of the Grootslang image. Of course, the main factor is still that in the process of transmitting and copying information, subtle differences such as typos or miswording led to changes in expression, which in turn caused misunderstandings, forming the elephant-headed snake internet myth. Of course, all of the above is only my personal conjecture. The Grootslang may simply have been, for that era, a collective vision people had when facing the unknown. A melange of giant serpent legends, which, in Africa, is particularly evident. This includes the Inkanyamba beneath Howick Falls we discussed before. These huge, terrifying creatures, on one hand, have become unsolved mysteries that trouble us, on the other, they turn into myth and legend, influencing the local culture and beliefs. Alright, the riddle of the Grootslang will be left to time to answer. I hope that one day in the future, we, with guidance from science, will reveal its true form. In the end, as always, the unknown is always greater than the known. That is the charm of UMA. This video ends here. Thanks for watching.
这也是 UMA 的魅力所在。本期视频就到这里，感谢观看。